Right. Welcome, everyone. It's September 13th, and this is the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee meeting. And we are gathered here today to take up a executive regulation on the pricing of MPDU units. And we're joined, of course, by Council Staff Linda McMillan and the team at DHCA, Director Nagam, Mr. Demaray, and I can't quite see who is the third person at the table. Apologize. So Linda, I'll turn it to you, and you can set up our conversation, please, and walk us through the pack.
I'm going to ask if our third person is Summer Cross. Is that you, Summer?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Hi, Linda.
It's hard when you have a mask on and you're this big in my screen.
I think this actually will be the first time that you have had Summer at one of your PHED meetings, but she is now on the staff of DHCA working in the Affordable Housing Program section. So this is her welcome to PHED committee.
Welcome, Summer. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
So you have before you today proposed executive regulation 921, which is an adjustment to the pricing for sale MPDUs. DHCA is going to start with a little bit of an overview presentation, but I did just want to emphasize that this is really a narrow adjustment for the prices of for sale MPDUs upon their first sale. So it doesn't adjust anything to do with the pricing of rental MPDUs, and it doesn't adjust anything that has to do with the pricing of the resale of a for sale MPDU. It is in response to rising construction costs. There has not been an adjustment, as you'll see, for a few years, and so this is before you. So unless other committee members have opening comments, I would ask DHCA if they're ready to do their presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see everyone again, and hope everyone had a good summer. So as Linda was mentioning, we are requesting a 6.5% CPI adjustment in the condo pricing. It's not that the department is obligated to change the price, to increase the price, but it is customary for the department to take a look at the CPI index, every now and then to see whether or not it's warranted to increase the price by the CPI index. So the last time around, we changed our CPI index for the pricing was in 2016. So we went back and looked over what the,
no, we don't want to do that.
So we looked over, what the CPI index change would have been. So it came out to 6.5%. But before we go into question and answers, we have a short presentation for you. So Summer Cross, who is here with us today, she'll make a presentation. Summer joined us a few months ago, and she is not new to the MPDU program. She was representing clients on the other side of the table. So we are very happy to have her join us. So Summer, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to share our screen, and hopefully this will work. There we go. Can everybody see it? I've kind of lost your faces when I did this.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great.
If you could put it in presentation mode, that might make it a little bigger for us. There you go.
There we go. Okay. So as you may know, the county's MPDU program is one of the oldest inclusionary zoning affordable housing programs in the country and a national model. Since its inception in the early 1970s, the program has generated over 16,000 affordable units. As of today, there are over 5,000 units under control, either sale or rental. And based on the proposed development in the pipeline, we expect that number to possibly double in the next 10 years. In fiscal year 21 alone, where we had a pandemic, obviously, we had 78 new for sale units and another 193 new rentals. Maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So the MPDU program is linked to zoning and development approvals, which means that it's applied evenly throughout the county. The number and location are determined at the time of land use and zoning approvals with Park and Planning, and they're required for projects where there are 20 or more units proposed. That's new construction, but also construction where they will change the use, say from a commercial or an office building to a residential development. For that reason, not only is it spread out throughout the county, it's also spread out through each development. For the past few years, say 9 years, the program has been averaging about 308 new MPDUs a year, 126 for sale, and approximately 182 rentals. So MPDUs can be classified into two different types, sales and rentals. Prices for sales are based on construction costs, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Rentals, on the other hand, are based on affordability of our certificate holders. We average a 65% AMI or average median income for garden apartments and 70% for high-rise units. The regulation in front of you has nothing to do with rental prices. It's not going to impact that at all. What this is meant to do is only affect the for-sale construction cost prices. The regulation proposes a 6.5% adjustment based on consumer price index increases that have occurred since the last time these regulations were updated. That was back in 2016. So essentially, we've just taken the CPI percentage for each year from 2016 to 2021, added them together, and we get 6.5%. That's very consistent with how these regulations have been updated in the past. Before 2016, in fact, the last time it was updated was in 2012. Again, they took the CPI percentage increases from 2012 to 2016, added them together, and raised the sales prices that way. From our research, this looks like it's only the 11th time in the approximately 31 years of this regulation's existence that we've updated. So it seems to be based on irregular updates that are necessary to avoid significant gaps between construction cost pricing and market cost factors. Obviously, recent substantial increases in construction costs is what kind of, for lack of a better word, raised a red flag that maybe we needed to take this opportunity to adjust the CPI. I'm going to pause here just to mention, too, another less significant change, but another change that this regulation is doing is to reorganize all of the regulations. At the strong suggestion of our county attorney, we took the time to reorganize these 30-plus-year-old regulations to something that's a lot more user-friendly. We made them more consistent with the organization patterns of other regulations, things like adding headers, adding definitions, and just making it a lot more logically organized. So as I mentioned, the need for the price increase at this time is due in part to the rise in construction costs that builders have been facing. This chart shows the building material supply increase that looking at from around the beginning of the pandemic in the spring of 2020 to approximately June of 2021. As you can see, the cost just rose astronomically. In June and July of this past year, which this chart does not reflect, those lumber prices and other building supplies do seem to have gone down, but they are still extremely higher than they were at the beginning of the pandemic. And as we've heard from the construction community, those prices and decrease haven't necessarily been passed down to builders yet. As I mentioned before, the MPDU pricing adjustment is routine. And this price spike does not represent a focus point, but it's again, a trigger for that time-to-time need to increase the prices. And also, I should point out that the price that we're suggesting to adjust is not based on these factors, but again, based on that CPI as we've done in the past. So again, the crux of the change is to increase the sales price. There's a lot of different factors that go into the calculation of MPDU sales prices. Each of these are line items that staff reviews and ensures compliance with our regulations, ensures affordability. The two items at the top are what will be adjusted by that 6.5%, the construction cost, and different adjustments that can be made to the price. The regulation also proposes something a little new, is a 3% buyer's closing cost, which I'd like to get into a little more. And that 3% closing cost credit, it gets credited back to the buyer at sales. It's going to replace current regulations provision of 6 different line items that are related to closing costs. Those items have been applied at settlement of the MPDUs, which the settlement is not part of the DHCA reviewed part of the MPDU process. So as a result, there's been no consistent application of the credit. Each settlement company has applied it differently, and there's just been inconsistencies in how the line items are presented. Excuse me. In response to that, staff would like to propose a 3% closing cost credit, which makes it very consistent, easy to track, and can be just a designated line item in all of our settlement sheets. It also, as you can imagine, would require less cash at closing for the buyer, so we see this as a real win. But because the 3% credit will be added to the sales price, we wanted to take the time to consider the impact it could possibly have on our sales prices and our purchasers. This chart shows that with the additional percentage added to the price, we're estimating a sort of minimal monthly impact to the mortgage, say $50 to $70, depending on the type of unit. But the guaranteed closing cost assistance would be a significant amount for our purchasers, that they would have less money that they have to bring to the table at closing. This chart is actually a low, middle, and high level of evaluation of the different types of MPDU units so that we can see the impact across the board. The other consideration we wanted to evaluate was that whether these price increases would still maintain affordability of our units. As you can see from here, we again took that low, middle, and high level of MPDUs and evaluated for affordability at both our 70% AMI, but also all the way down to 50% AMI. As you can see, for all of them, 70% is still considered very affordable. For most of them, 50% is also affordable. I'd like to point out, too, that the majority of our for sale units are townhomes, which are still very affordable at 50 and 70%. Mask is drying my throat. Garden and high rises will also be modified by this regulation, but the affordability of those units will depend on the cost of condominium fees, which are just difficult to estimate. But based on condominium fees for similar projects, those units, again, generally remain affordable. We also considered this new regulation and price increase as compared to other jurisdictions around us, and identified that Montgomery County is still significantly below those other jurisdictions, both in terms of the typical townhouse prices that we would offer and the AMI served for our households. The regulation was posted in the July Register as required. We received very, very few comments on this. The Maryland Building Industry Association sent in a letter, I believe it was attached to your packet, endorsing the fundamental structure of the amendment and the general idea of increasing our prices. Staff had an additional conversation with them leading up to this discussion, and at that time it came to light that maybe the 30-day effective period was a little longer than we needed. It was just a copy from the previous resolution, so after discussing it and considering it, staff recommended retaining only a week between the approval date and the effective date, so 7 days in order to give us time to update our website with additional documentation that needs to be online that would change because of this regulation. And also, this would benefit the community at large as well, because more units will come on as soon as these price regulations take effect. We also received one email asking for a little clarification of that closing cost credit, the 3%. Staff then kind of reevaluated and determined that the detriment of maybe increasing the mortgage amount was far outweighed by the benefits that this 3% credit is going to have to require less closing by the buyer and more standardization across all of our MPDUs. And again, this regulation is very important to bring new units online. We have a waiting list of county residents interested in purchasing MPDUs. As of last month, there were 414 eligible households. Those are people who have qualified for lending, have attended all 3 required classes for MPDUs, and now have been issued an MPDU certificate and are ready to purchase a house. They just need the houses to purchase. MPDU purchasers generally range from 65 to 70% AMI range, but as I mentioned, some have incomes as low as around 45%, and that's in part because in addition to individual purchasers, the Housing Opportunities Commission and other nonprofits get the opportunity to purchase some of these MPDUs. And together, those entities own approximately 1,700 units, which can provide housing to households as low as 45% AMI. So with that, we feel that the proposed changes in this regulation will help developers cover their costs in order to supply new units and to meet our growing demand for moderately priced dwelling units. Are there any questions?
Great presentation. Thank you. Well, we can open the floor for questions. I guess turn it to Linda for analysis and comments first. But you know, I guess my core question would be, allowing for the developers to recover their costs is sort of an important legal underpinning, is my understanding. But Linda, let's turn it to you and have you walk through.
Right, and I was just going to say, it is a combination of wanting to be able to adjust the cost so that the developers receive a reasonable price for the construction of the unit. Also, please do recall that in the overall effort in the zoning, in the inclusionary zoning, there is bonus density also given to offset the cost of providing MPDUs. And that's why the really critical thing, which I think DHCA has addressed, is that even within this increase, which does account for CPI increases, the units are still affordable to the households that Montgomery County targets. And so while I do, it's always interesting to see jurisdictional comparisons, you know, we need to know that we are trying to target households that would otherwise not really be able to get into homeownership. Some other jurisdictions target their affordable units at a little bit higher income than that, but I think that this regulation allows for a price increase for the builders and at the same time keeps us where we are in terms of the policy of who we're targeting the units to. So I do recommend approval of the regulation as it's come over. And again, I think as DHCA does their more complete review, you'll be able to get more into the details, including how resales and other parts of the MPDU program work.
Okay. All right. Do my colleagues have any questions? Mr. Juando.
No, just, well, maybe one question. I'll probably work my way into a question, but good to be back with everybody. And Summer, I'm sorry, I can't remember the last name, but Summer stuck out because, but welcome to the PHED committee and to the HCA. And that was a great presentation. One question I think you kind of answered, but I wanted to check on. So you mentioned 11 times in 37 some odd years. This would automatically do it going forward, or would not, or you'd have to come back? So no, okay, I didn't think so. So what's the thinking? And should there be some sort of periodic review, or does that already take place, or how do we, you know, probably, hopefully, I mean, I don't know if I'll be here, but someone will be here when we need to do it again. So what's the process or the thought process there?
So you would need a change in the law to change how the regulation moves forward, and I would expect that's going to be part of this overall look, but I'll let DHCA address that. But for right now, they would have to send over a regulation change each time under the current law.
Yeah, I mean, based on the current process, we follow method 1 process, so it has to go through the council. So it is a process. And as you take a look at going back to 2016, the CPI index, collectively has not gone up by a big margin, like 6.5%. So from time to time, the department does take a look. The department is not obligated to increase the price, but it is customary for the department to take a look at the material prices to see what's happening in the marketplace and suggest any adjustment to the price.
Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. You both answered. I think that makes sense and seems pretty reasonable. And we obviously want the affordability to be maintained. And we want to make sure that cost isn't passed on in that way. I'm glad to hear that the lumber prices are going down. It's something we've all been hearing in the housing market in general. And so appreciate you're anticipating that and that this will bake that in. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, we've got a proposed regulation before us. Had a good discussion about it. We'll take this without objection. All right. Fed committee. Is there anything else, Linda, we need to discuss, or we're good?
That's it. This would go on the council's agenda for a week from tomorrow, and it would be on the consent calendar, given the committee's recommendation.
Super. All right. Well, the Fed committee will recommend to the council approval. All right. Well, record time, less than a half an hour.
Can we do all the meetings like this?
I would just point out that's 2 Fed committee meetings in a row. Our last one on the way out in July, and our first one here in September. So this is a good little run we're on.
Yeah, I'm afraid it won't.
We'll try.
Okay.
Good to see all of you again.
Yep, good to see you again. And I know it's been a busy time, so we'll see you at the next one. All right, thank you very much, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thanks.